All right. Hi and welcome. This is Pamela Wagner from Agile Digital, and I'm here today with Marco Grishaber from WunderAds agency, which he founded and is the CEO of. Now, he has been running his agency for more than 5 years, and he's been passionate for helping people, especially e-commerce owners and e-commerce businesses, increase their sales. And his team does that by mostly focusing on getting high quality visitors to their websites and also increasing the rate at which those visitors buy their product. He has a very, very deep understanding of e-commerce and search engine marketing. So I'm super, super excited that we have him here today. And I want to share one very, very interesting fact about Marco. He has won the first place in the national student competition in Taekwondo. So if you ever get the chance to meet him, be careful. Welcome,
Wow.
Marco.
Thank you so much, Pamela. You truly did your research. I'm very impressed that you brought that detail up from my history. Amazing. I'm not as flexible anymore. I just want to shout it out. So I'm not as dangerous as I used to be as a student. But yeah,
I believe it.
awesome. Yeah, happy to
Wonderful.
be here.
So today we're going to talk about how to make the most of YouTube ads and how to know that they're doing really well. So this is mostly for people who are more in the beginner stage, but I have a nudge that this is probably also going to be valuable for people who have ran YouTube ads for quite some time. Now, starting off, I have a couple more like basic questions for you, which get asked a lot of times by people. So I want to make sure that we have them covered before we dive right into YouTube ads. So in general, one of the most often asked questions I get is, how long does Google Ads take to optimize?
Right. So yeah, when we take on new accounts here, we have to look if it's a completely, so there's different factors. Also, how much data is in the account. So we need to look at the new accounts and see whether they have an offer that has been already been proven in the market. That's the key criteria first. So like, yeah, have they been running on other marketing channels? Is their website optimized and so forth? And then when we go to Google Ads, some clients, they were already running on Google Ads, so we have to do some tweaks and other optimizations. But let's say we have a complete new account with Google Ads and this channel is not being proven yet. What we then have to see is we first have to generate massive amounts of data, and Google Ads is not as quickly as Facebook ads. So Facebook ads, it takes a few seconds really to get it going. And with Google Ads, first we set up 2 weeks roundabout for the setup, and then there are different steps, and I can elaborate on that later. But just to give a timeline, we usually don't set expectations for less than 3 months on new accounts to really see some positive results. Of course, there will be indications in this process, and we are always optimizing. But there's just a lot of things that needs to be dialed in before we can actually get results, depending on the offer and the whole system. Can I hear you? I'm sorry, but I cannot hear you. I have some issues.
Oh, the classic example of being muted. I love
No.
it. It's happening
Okay.
for like 7 years of working globally.
All good. I thought it's a more technical glitch. I was shocked.
No.
But yeah, glad you're back.
Yeah, I tend to mute myself mostly to reduce any noise and to make sure that the speaker is audible more clearly. All right. So sorry. So it's
You're back. You're back now.
Yeah. So optimizing a campaign campaigns is a really broad field with a lot of like what ifs, and it depends on in terms of like, what campaigns you're using, what goals you have, and so on. So can you
Yeah.
share like one or two aspects that you look at with almost every campaign when you optimize them?
Yeah, sure. So I can give you a brief rundown first. So what we will do first is, let's say we have a new campaign, we just launch it, we have the conversion tracking installed, we have the campaigns built out, then we launch it. The first thing that we are going to look for is, do we actually get traffic there? Are the impressions running? Is the traffic running? So that has to do with the settings inside of the account. Are we having the right bid strategy? Are the keywords, are the bids correct, and whatnot? That's a very short process. It takes 2 to 3 days at max. The second stage is then looking if this traffic that we're generating is actually relevant. Are people actually looking for keywords or the search terms that are relevant to the offer? And that happens in the search terms field primarily. So we just want to make sure that this traffic is working great. Of course, there's other optimizations then that will happen as more data as we generate around the ad creatives as well. But yeah, one key or one leading indication or indicator is then, for example, the conversions. That usually takes 1 to 2 weeks, and then we can see, oh, now we're getting conversions in, the conversion tracking is set up properly. Actually, it works. This traffic is somewhat converting whatever conversion goal we have defined at the beginning. The conversion goal, that could be either a sale. For e-commerce, it's usually a sale, or a lead generation. So when someone is signing up to your email list. And yeah, that would be the next kind of aspect that we're looking to improve and to optimize for. And only then we can also see like how much are we actually spending for this conversion. And we look at all the different settings and see, okay, what is actually providing the most efficient cost per conversion. Not always do we have the data for a lag indication right at the beginning. So like I always separate by lag indicator, which is sales or profit, which ideally you want to always optimize for profit, ideally, right? But with leading indicators, you can kind of direct towards this lagging indicator. So at the beginning, the data is small. We look at the lead indicators, and we want to optimize them for cost per conversion. We can look at different devices, different locations, and so forth. Depending then on what the goal is next, with e-commerce, we don't have a big feedback loop because usually people go to the website, they check out ideally. But also with some e-commerce sites, which are more on the high scale side, or lead generation, or in general with lead generation sites, we create leads. So we are actually helping them to get leads on their email list as well. That has the purpose or the dynamic as well that people are getting nurtured there. They're getting more familiarized with the brand. When they're not as ready, it's just another touch point in this whole marketing channel. So then we need to have a loop. Once we do lead generation, we need to create a feedback loop with this client to identify the lead quality. How good are those leads that we're generating in terms of, do they convert actually into sales down the road, or they have some objections, and is there anything that we could could adjust at the Google Ads side of things. Last but not least, we then optimize for sales and profit once we have that dialed in. And there are different indications inside the Google Ads account for all different aspects that we can look at, and which I can also elaborate on later. But this is so the process which can take actually up to 3 months or plus when we're looking at optimizing those accounts. That makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's important that you keep highlighting that this is a process that takes time, right? So it's like,
Yeah.
it's not a one-time thing. It's like you have to take and give it sometimes weeks or months, because that's simply how the algorithm works in Google, and because there's so many different things you can optimize for, right? So
Yeah.
I want to slowly go over to YouTube ads. And one interesting thing that you mentioned is the search terms report if one works with search campaigns, right?
Right.
And most people don't even know that you can actually see what people searched for, like that triggered your keywords, right?
Yeah.
So going over to YouTube ads, what would be something comparable there that people could look out for to see where maybe their YouTube ads showed?
So when we talk about YouTube ads, we have slightly different targeting options. We have not slightly different. We have significant different options than what we have with Google search. So we have a lot of more interest targeting options. So let me just count a few. And by the way, also YouTube ads unfortunately made quite some changes. Last year, it was still possible, for example, that you were able to add placements, YouTube channels. You were just able to add them in and then to play your ads there. Plus, you had keyword targeting in YouTube ads, and they're now slowly removing it. But what works really great with YouTube advertising is, and here I have to highlight it works really well with lead generation. That's where we see great results with. So we have remarketing campaigns. They're really great, but because people are usually from the website, they have visited the website, or you can also remarket to their YouTube channel or specific video watchers and so on. So you can actually utilize every setting that you also could do with Google Analytics. You can have users they have been visiting your website, maybe looking at 2 sites plus, so that they have a certain engagement and over a time period. So remarketing is the first thing. The second part where you can actually have some options for optimization is then custom audiences. But the way it works is usually we set up little clusters. So we have like different, and that's a little bit more technical. We have a YouTube campaign, and when we run this custom intent targeting option, we would segment it out in different ad groups. And there we have like little keyword clusters. So you can still create keyword clusters in those custom intent. It's a functionality to bundle them in 5 to 10 keywords. And you can then see where the ads are showing on what videos and what channels. There's an option, and you can exclude those placements from your targeting. So you can still exclude certain things. For Google search campaigns, you usually exclude keywords or you put them on a negative keyword list. And here you can just use those placements and videos and exclude them as well, if that makes sense.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think these are quite some important changes that you're mentioning there. I mean, I still remember like way back like 7-8 years ago when I used to work at Google, we had maybe one change once a quarter or once every 6 months. And now one of the challenge with Google Ads really is to stay up to date in terms of what's happening and what's changing, what you can use, what you can't use anymore. So in terms of YouTube ads, how do you stay up to date with the latest changes?
So that's a good question. Personally, I have been joining so-called mastermind groups with people, with other agency owners that are just doing the same as I do. I have to pay for that, an annual fee or monthly fee. And then I have direct contact to those talents. And that's either in a forum or in a Facebook group where we can exchange this information. Obviously, I'm subscribed to also some of the publications, SEO Journal, and what their names are. There are quite a few blogs out there. I don't have them in the top of my mind right now because I'm a little bit nervous. But if you just look for Google Ads and SEO newsletters, there are quite some famous ones. I'm subscribed to them. They are usually announcing different feature changes. Google Ads announces them as well. So I have all the emails. I'm not putting them on a separate inbox, so they all go into my main inbox. So I also see the new feature announcements and updates that they're also introducing. And then additionally, I follow some of the key influencers in the market, either on Twitter or on Facebook.
Awesome. You're having a 360-degree system of staying up to date.
So
So
to speak, yeah.
yeah, and I mean it's important because like you can't just learn about Google Ads once and then assume that's going to be how it's going to be in a year or like 2 years from now. It's
So
never
much changes.
Yeah. So you already talked a little bit about targeting and creatives. So in terms of targeting, what would you say are 2 best practices that you like to work with?
So when it comes to YouTube, targeting best practices, so there are those different options that I would definitely always try out. So targeting, when you have YouTube, targeting is important. Let me just maybe draw out the hierarchy here. So the first thing, what the main important aspect for any kind of business is obviously the offer that needs to be dialed in. It needs to be proven. And then the second thing with YouTube advertisement is the ad creative. That's really where the juice needs to flow, and that's quite difficult. That's quite a variable that is challenging to dial in. The targeting, the best practices in there is like you need to know what to target and what hierarchy. Like as I just mentioned, remarketing is a great option. You can remarket already engaged people who have already some sort of context around your brand, about your offer, because they were either on your website or on your YouTube channel. Pardon. So you can target to those. The problem is only that it's not really scalable because you're only tailoring to this amount of people that were on the website or on this YouTube channel. So then the next best thing is those custom intent audiences. How they work is like you can plug in those clusters, as we call them, like between 5 to 10 keywords into one ad group, basically. They could also be URLs. So one little trick that I want to share here is that it hasn't worked out well for us yet. But you can, in theory, you can target your competitor URLs because it allows you to plug in URLs. So if you take your competitor's URL and you plug it in to this custom intent targeting, then in theory you do some competitor remarketing. So you can also remarket to the people who checked out the website of your competitor, because usually websites have a Google Analytics tag installed, and this is how the Google ecosystem works, and this is how they're also getting data. So this is a little trick. And then what can work is like in-market audiences. So you have a few selections, but you need to really dial it in and find those markets. Google is sometimes recommending you certain in-market segments as well, but you have to keep on testing them. And if you dial those in, you have also a lot of potential for scale.
Yeah, I think those options to target URLs of eventually competitors or even like, let's say, magazine websites or news sites, whatever is important and interesting for your audience is a very, very powerful tool that most people aren't aware of, right?
Yeah, that's something I gave a talk during the last year at a conference, and then people like it was in front of 120 people or so, and then people were just like, "Wow, how can you do this?" Yeah, that's being said, it's not always easy to make it also work. It's really like about the ad creative and the offer and how your funnel is put together. There's very a lot of variables, but it is some opportunity. It is something to explore, and it's a very interesting one. We have clients that YouTube ads in general work really, really well for the lead generation, and later they convert into sales. So overall, it's very profitable and scalable.
Yeah, and the point that you mentioned here, which is I really want people to take away as well, is that there's a lot of variables to it, right? And turning on YouTube ads or a search campaign and so on doesn't mean you'll automatically get leads. Like it is important how your funnel looks like, how your pricing is, what product you're selling, and all of that, right? So if you work, let's say, with someone only for YouTube ads, be aware there's a lot of other factors to it. And of course, you, the company, the client, does have a role to play here, right?
Absolutely. No, it's a good point that you also emphasize on this, Pamela, because this is an expectation that we always need to set from the beginning. It's a collaboration. We can only, as far as our capacities goes at the moment, we focus on the traffic aspects, but this is only one component of this whole formula. There needs to be a team in place, or there needs to be resources also dedicated towards making this funnel work. There needs to be a lead generation system, for instance, and there needs to be a sales system in place. Ideally, if it's proven already with some other traffic channels, that's ideal, but it's not always the case. So if it's not proven yet already, people need to keep in mind this entire process. It will take longer because it takes time for the data to be generated, and then it takes resources to make those tweaks, to either change out the ad creative, to maybe optimize the landing page, to create a new email sequence, or do those other tweaks in order to make this entire funnel work. So this is what people need to keep in mind. It's not a very easy thing to do, but once you get it done, you basically build your own money machine, so to speak.
So that sounds like a really, really good idea. Like everybody likes the money machine. And there's one word that you mentioned, which is resources. So I think right now the biggest obstacle to most people to get into YouTube ads is that they're wondering how to create that video, right? How to create a video that performs well, so to speak. So talking about the ad creative, what are like some 2 to 3 tips you could give people on what a good YouTube ad entails?
Sure. So there's, and that's really a big component in this whole operation is the ad creative, and we separate it by a hook. So that's the beginning part. How you can grab the attention, how you speak to your demographic, so that people stay hooked with this video. And then you have a body part where you can have different elements and different concepts. And then the last part is always the call to action. You want to tell them what's the next step. Hey, go to this website and submit your details and so on. So you want to give them a direction at the end. And there's different concepts around the body part. So one more thing is, like, usually when we start testing, we don't only have one video or so. We usually start out with at least one concept, but usually we have 2, and then we have 3 different variations. So usually we have like so the body part and the end part, the call to action part stays the same, but then we have different hooks. And the first thing that we would do is, like, we would test what hook will be performing better. So that's an important thing to keep in mind. You want to test the hook first, because it's like the important part. Another thing to know is that with YouTube ads, for the regular in-stream ads, that's usually what we are using primarily. This is the ad when you want to start to watch a random video, and then in the first, it pops up immediately, and then you have, like, after 4 or 5 seconds, you have the skip button, and that's a so-called in-stream ad. And you need to keep in mind that for the first 30 seconds, you after the 30 seconds, it counts as a view. That's also different if you compare it to Facebook, because in Facebook, the view is defined for someone who only watches it for 3 seconds or so. So if you have a video on YouTube with 1 million views, it's only when they almost just scroll down the newsfeed and they stumble upon an ad and they watch it for 3 seconds. This is already counting a view in Facebook, but for YouTube, it is only for 30 seconds. So you need to have this 30-second window in your mind when you conceptualize your ad creative, because you don't want everyone to watch your video, obviously. And so you want to really qualify the person when they watch it, because it's good to have a certain view rate, so people of viewing the ad. But if it's getting too much, you don't want that, because that means that too many people that are not really being targeted, that they're watching it. So it's like the right balance is important to find that out. Let me explain a few things about the body part. There's always there are different frameworks that you can use. A simple one is AIDA, attention, desire, information, and action. But there's also Tom Breeze's Educate. I don't know now all the acronyms, but it's basically you want to create desire, you want to teach them a thing, you want to also create credibility. What we usually do is with our ads, we have a lot of testimonials in, or sometimes we're matching up those testimonials, or showing if it's a coaching client or a client that has some sort of authority, then showing this person when they have this footage from them talking to a stage, talking to an audience, and so on. If like to have this credibility, to show this credibility is very important. And then of course talking to their pain points and providing the solutions, but only to a certain extent. So you only want to teach one or two things in this video, and for the rest of the solution, you want to have a strong call to action, have them to go to your website and convert further.
Absolutely. I think one of the main things for people is to understand that most of the times in your ad, whether that is written or in a video, you're not supposed to teach a whole lot, because if you teach too much, then people get a plaster on the wound, so to speak, when actually they would need surgery, right? So you want to kind of like tease the problem and make them understand what is the problem and then how they can solve it. And also be aware that you only have like a minute or two, or however long the video is. So it's really not a lot of time, right?
Yeah.
And the concept that you mentioned of testimonials, I think that's something super, super important. Now, what I notice across the world is that this is usually easier to bring in for like American or Canadian clients. But like when we were in Europe or Asia, we were being very, very shy, right? It's like almost being taught, don't talk too much about yourself, because, if you're good, someone else will talk about you, right? But you got to show people that someone else is talking about you. And the way you do this is by adding right?
Yeah. Well, that's a good point. I have to say I only cater to Americans, so maybe you can just hire an American. I know on Upwork there's actually actors, so no joke or semi joke. You can actually hire someone if you feel uncomfortable. You can hire an actor. If your market is internationally or in the States, then it might make sense. Yeah, but if you are too shy, there's also different ways. Like when there's an owner, founder, and they don't have a team member that they can put into this role, then what can be done is, for example, having the script and then having a voiceover that could be done by the client, or you have voiceover talents, relatively cost effective, that you can get out of Fiverr or on other platforms too. And then this video, it doesn't need to have a talking head necessarily. I do recommend it. That we see good results with it, because having your own face in front of it, it's usually also a building of rapport and a building of trust. But yeah, another option is to have primarily animated videos or stock images, or like using different stock footages and putting them together. That's definitely an option to try. Some brands, some e-commerce brands that we work with, they also have brand promoters or advocates, and they encourage them to record some footage as well. So maybe they can reach out to those advocates and get them as the spokesperson of the brand in some way. So there's multiple options that you can try to get to those resources and make it work. And if nothing, if you don't find this person, you can always have a script, have a voiceover talent, and just use some animations or stock images to put a video ad together and give it a shot. And plus some it doesn't need to be purely it's a so-called mixed media video where you also when you have like a product and you have like already some kind of product videos and whatnot, then you can use that. I just remember, or it just comes to my mind, friends of mine, they run a very, very, very successful 8-figure e-commerce brand for lifestyle accessories. You don't see those founders actually. Oh, yeah, not true. One co-founder was in the video, but they have a team, an in-house team, with the PPC person, with the script writer, with the editors, and they have even a little studio in their office. But what they do is they hire primarily actors, relatively inexpensively, students that want to do a little bit modeling, want to do a little bit money on the side, and they actually create very interesting ads this way as well with this kind of constellation. So there's plenty of options if you don't want to show up yourself in this regard. Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. So there's I would say YouTube ads are possible for everybody. It's just about taking that first step, and that first step may be the hardest, and selecting what you want to get started off with, right?
Absolutely.
And I think with that, what we're already touching on is kind of like the psychology behind it, because there's a lot going on in our minds and in the minds of our clients. So tell us a little bit more about the psychology of YouTube ads.
Yeah, that's primarily the kind of psychology, the difference between, so we have this platform called Google Ads, and then we have all those different networks, Google Search, Google Display, and then we have YouTube ads with this video content. And I think it's an interesting psychology behind that, because YouTube, first of all, has almost replaced our TVs to some extent. So we're watching YouTube a lot, and videos in general, they create this emotional interest. So we store much more when we have more senses activated. So we actually see, we hear this content. And one example that I always like to bring is like everyone sort of remembers the Coca-Cola Christmas TV ad that comes on the TV with the Santa Claus and the trucks driving around and so on, and it has a certain emotion attached to it somewhere in the brain. So it's an interesting format for people, especially who have been running Google Ads already successfully and other channels, then to expand into that and to tap into those emotions. But then also, combined with the storytelling, that also plays a role. You can use that to tell your branding story and to just create this trust much more easier. And with this, with trust, with content and the elements that I said a couple of minutes before, you can just like create a much higher bond and engagement, and therefore ideally also a conversion rate. Because it's a very great format to just deliver your messaging from your product or from your offer.
Absolutely. And it's the point of emotions is something that a lot of companies often forget, because they think, oh, people are buying a product from me, so I have to tell them why they should buy from me and why I'm awesome and why my company is awesome, right? But the thing is, people don't care about you or your company. They care about how can you solve their problem, right?
Correct. Yeah, I like the way you phrase it. Right to the point.
Yeah, like
what's the value for me? What's in for me?
Exactly. What's in it for me? So that's what you have to speak to. And what I always tell my students is people buy emotions, not products, right? So as you brought these examples, like we do remember certain things because of the emotions attached to it, right?
Yeah.
So really get clear on what emotion do you want to evoke in your ad and how can you bring that best across, right?
Yes. Yeah. That's true. Hitting the point.
Awesome. So before we round this up, any last words or ideas or thoughts that come to your mind about YouTube ads or something that you'd really, really want people to know that we haven't covered yet?
Those are the basics, as I mentioned it. I think just to keep in mind the hierarchy of importance is to have a compelling offer. And one tip is here, Alex Hormozy. He has this book, $100 million offer or so, or 10 million. So he brings it all up, like how you can really have a very compelling offer. That's the key. Then have your landing pages in place, your funnel in place. Then the ad creative is really important when you have figured that out, and testing out the different targeting options, and then a few settings is also important to keep in mind. So those four numbers are important. And yeah, it is about experimenting. It is about creating the data, and it's about asking the right questions about the data too. You want to not only have data for the sake of it, but you need to know what to do with it. One thing we haven't really talked so much is like there's certain metric that you can look at for doing some optimizations, like click-through rate is interesting when it comes to ad, for example. That's one metric to look at. How many people are actually clicking on it from the impression, so you know how relevant it is. Then there's the conversion rate. Do you have a good conversion rate or bad conversion rate with a landing page? So knowing the data and interpreting, analyzing this data is what it comes out with, and being willing and ready to invest into that is just part of the process.
Awesome.
Essential.
I think you summed it up really, really well, like all these different parts that one has to or should take care of in order to be successful with YouTube ads, right?
Yes. I think yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I think that is yeah. I think that was the final word. Sorry, I don't have anything more to add. I was just thinking in my mind.
No worries. That was a great summary.
Super.
So if people now say, this sounds a lot, I get it, I think I should do it for my business, but I don't have time to do all this my own, I get into it, and they're like, I need Marco's help, how can they find you?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm happy to get in touch. If anyone has some questions or want some help, then people can find me. First of all, our website is WunderAds.agency. So Wunder is with a U, not an O. WUNDERADS, and then .agency. That's our website, and then people can email me to Marco with a C, MARCO @WunderAds.agency. That's the easiest way.
Awesome, wonderful.
But they can also find me on LinkedIn, just typing in my name, Marco Grishaber, and LinkedIn is another option. Yeah.
Wonderful. I just want to make sure also for LinkedIn, if you find Marco Julian Grishaber, so make sure to enter his second name, because I notice if I just look you up with one name, like it doesn't always show you immediately. So I want to make sure people find you.
That's good to know. Maybe I remove it. So maybe just in this case it might be easier. That's the feedback.
It actually makes you stand out. The Julian, because there's others that have the same name. So if you keep the Julian, I would view it from that perspective that people actually can find you quicker.
Okay. I will think about it. Thank you for this. I didn't know.
Yeah. So awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing all those nuggets, pieces of wisdom, and snippets of information with us.
My pleasure. I hope it was helpful for the one or the other person.
Absolutely. Well, I'm wishing you a good rest of the night, evening, and for everybody else, morning, day, wherever you are. And thank you so much for tuning in.
Thanks for having me, Pamela. Talk to you soon.
Bye.
Cheers.